Welcome to Grief and Gratitude Podcast. We're your hosts, Mandy and Crystal.
This is a space for honest conversations about loss, healing, and everything in between. Each week, we share stories, perspectives, and moments that remind us that even in the hardest seasons, gratitude can still exist. Thank you for sharing space with us. We're really glad you're here.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Grief and Gratitude Podcast. This is Crystal and Mandy. This is our 7th episode. I'm going to hand it off to Mandy so she can introduce our guest.
Hey, everyone. We're here today with Betsey. I met Betsey in college. We were both doing criminal justice degrees. And then Betsey decided to go another way and got her nursing degree. And she did that for some time. And now she does some hospice work. So thanks so much for being here today, Betsey. And I'll let you take the floor and tell your story.
Sure. Well, I appreciate being asked to come. I feel like my biggest season of loss was in 2016 to 2017. I had a couple of pretty significant losses that happened pretty much one right after the other. And that season ended up completely changing the direction of my life. In February of 2016, my brother, Travis, my older brother, was diagnosed with colon cancer. It was February 26th, and he went to the emergency room for some upper abdominal pain. He thought he had an ulcer. And after some imaging, they actually figured out that his body was riddled with cancer. Ultimately determined it was colon cancer, but when they found it, he had already metastasized from his colon to his liver and his diaphragm and lungs and up. So he was already essentially terminal upon diagnosis. And he fought really hard for 10 months, doing chemo and trying to get into a medical study in Boston. And he went down to Boston in September-ish, October-ish timeframe, and was told that he couldn't participate anymore because the cancer had spread and it was occluding a duct in his liver. So he came home thinking he just needed to work harder and keep doing the chemo and make sure he was taking care of himself. And in December, he was told that there really isn't anything else we can do for you. And I can remember having a conversation with Travis where he was saying, it's okay, I'm going to get through this. This is going to work itself out. I'm going to get back into the study. We're going to go back down to Boston and it's all going to be okay. So there was never a point where he ever really accepted what was happening. And I'd had a family trip planned in December, and I was going to cancel the whole thing and stay home. And Travis got mad at me and he said, no, you're not. You're going to go on that trip and I'm going to see you when you get back. And so the day before we left, I went to his house with my son and we visited with him for a little while. And then we went on our trip and we were in Disney World, and I FaceTimed my brother while we were in Animal Kingdom walking around near where the gorillas are. And I FaceTimed him so he could see me and he could see the gorillas behind him. And we had a conversation and he made a couple jokes. And then I said, all right, I'll see you when I get home. And I came home and I remember visiting him on Christmas Eve because it was just before Christmas. And he wasn't right. He was confused and he didn't remember things and his face was sunken and he was starting to get agitated, and I knew something was wrong. Something was really wrong. And even though I was a nurse, I hadn't done really any hospice, hadn't had any experience with people who were actively dying. And I called my dad and I said, I think we need to call someone. This isn't like, he's not acting normally. We need to get someone in there. And we ended up having an emergency admission to hospice on Christmas Day. And the nurse came to the house and did an evaluation, and we got a hospital bed in, and they brought in like a walker and a commode and all the things we would need to take care of him at home because he was not leaving his house. He didn't believe he was dying. We were overreacting. He wasn't. Everything was going to be okay. And for the next not even 4 days, it was like 3 days, my mom and my dad and his wife, Carly, and then myself were essentially with him around the clock for 3 days. We had the nurse, the hospice nurse, only ended up coming back once more because he started getting agitated and was having trouble walking to the bathroom. So they came and they placed a Foley catheter for us. And then that was really it. The contact was limited to questions about medication. And we were just doing it on our own, trying to keep him comfortable and keep him safe. And I remember being there, not wanting to leave. And eventually I said, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to put my kids to bed and I'll be back at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And this was like midnight the night before, the 28th. And I'd only been home for like 2 hours, and I got a phone call from my mom, and she was pretty upset. And I can remember her saying, Betsey, something's wrong. Something's not right. You need to come back and you need to be here. And I jumped out of my bed and I got in my car, and I can remember that K-Love was playing on my car radio, and there was the song Great Are You Lord was playing from the time it took me to drive to my house to his house. It was playing the whole time. And I ran out of my car and ran to the door, and my dad caught me at the doorway. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, I'm so sorry, Betsey, he's gone. Like, it was probably less than 3 minutes it took me to get from my house to his house. And I didn't make it. And I was really angry with him because I'd been there for so long. Like, we'd been there for hours and hours and I wasn't there. And I can look back on it now and I know that was his last act of protection. Like, I don't have those images in my head. I don't have what he looked like as he was dying, but I was pissed. I was really mad at him. Like, why did you do this? And it was right in the middle of my RN year at school. I'd gone back to school that August because I had been an LPN for 8 years. I went back and got my RN, and it was during Christmas break. And I had a week off in between from when he died. He died on December 29th, early in the morning. And I had to be back in school a couple days later. And I honestly don't know how I survived school. I think my nursing instructors took some pity on me because they knew what was going on. And I remember the funeral. I remember people shaking my hand but not seeing their faces. And I remember his friends showing up and hearing these stories over and over of like how my brother took care of them and protected them. And like people out of the blue coming and saying like, oh, I broke my arm at work. And even though Travis had to have the trash basket next to him so he could throw up, he sat there with me the whole time and made me laugh. It's like that was Trav. It was him. Absolutely. And then I started my next semester of nursing school, and you get put in different clinical rotations. And I was put in chemotherapy and hospice and home health. And I remember walking into my day on the chemotherapy floor, and there is my brother's obituary up on the wall as I walked in. And I was like, what is he doing here? And the nurses were like, oh, he was one of our favorite patients because he was so funny. And he used to make fun of himself because he would always pass out when we'd draw his blood, and we'd have to go get Carly from the waiting room so she could come in and hold his hand while he was waking back up. And then I So I met the nurses that were with him, and then they introduced me to his doctor who had taken care of him. It's like, okay, there's Trev. And then the next one, I was put in hospice with the hospice nurse that admitted him. And it's like, what is going on? So here's another opportunity I have to talk about Travis and hear from the people who had helped him. And these things just started happening where I was shown like these glimmers of this is important and you need to keep going down this path. And so I graduated from nursing school, passed by the skin of my teeth. I didn't know until the day before graduation that I was passing because I lost my ability to retain information while I was like in that space of grief, but having to still keep going. And I feel like because we took care of Travis at home, we all had to stop what we were doing. Like I wasn't his sister. I was a caregiver helping to take care of him. And I didn't get to process what was actually that I was losing my brother. And then I had to go right back to school. And I got to the end of the school year and found out I was pregnant, like unexpectedly pregnant. And I've had to figure out what to do. Like, do I go get a job? What do I do? And I decided to wait to give myself a little time to process. And graduated, thank God, and then had to focus on, okay, now this is going to happen. So I was in May or June, and I still was working. I was doing injection clinics and I was working in a doctor's office, but it wasn't what I ultimately wanted to be doing with my RN. So I waited. And then I started having complications with my pregnancy. I started bleeding at like 6 weeks. So we thought it wasn't going to be viable, but it continued, but I never actually stopped bleeding. So as I had to go get like RhoGAM shots and have extra ultrasounds. And I can remember at my 18-week appointment, the midwife couldn't find the heartbeat for a while. And towards the end of it, I started getting nervous and she's like, no, I can hear it. It's okay. And I remember thinking I never actually heard this heartbeat, like of the baby. But she said, nope, it's fine. We'll see you at your 20-week appointment for your ultrasound. And in the meantime, I got this email that was like, it's been this amount of time since your last RhoGAM shot. If you're still bleeding, you should come back and have another one. And so I called the office and was like, I guess I need to get another shot because I'm still bleeding. And I came in and I thought it was just a nurse appointment. There ended up being a midwife there and they wanted to check for the heartbeat again. It's like, all right. I was laying down on the table and I was laying there for like 10 minutes and she couldn't find the heartbeat. And she's like, I'm going to go get the doctor, like your doctor. And I'm going to have her do an ultrasound and just verify it that way. And she's walking out of the room and then she stops and she turns around and comes back to me and she's like, you know what? I need to tell you, I should have found the heartbeat by now. And I just need you to be aware of that before I go get my doctor. And a nurse came back like 20 minutes later and was like, I'm going to move you to a different room. We're going to put you in a room with an ultrasound so that we can do this for you. And it ended up being in a part of the office I'd never been to. It was way in the back, like away from everything. And there was the ultrasound machine in there and like nothing else. But it was, I remember just laying there and waiting and waiting. And then finally my OBGYN Paula came in and she said, all right, so we're going to look for the heartbeat and I'll tell you everything that I see as I'm doing it. And I just remember laying there by myself and just knowing something wasn't right and this wasn't good. And she looked for like 10 minutes and was really quiet and was taking these measurements, but still wasn't saying anything. And she was typing on the ultrasound machine and then she turned around and she looked at me and she goes, Betsey, I am so sorry, but there is no heartbeat. And I think he has been gone for a little while because he was measuring around 18 weeks, like the previous appointment where they couldn't find the heartbeat. And I remember laying there in shock, like, this isn't real. Like, I'm not awake right now. This is not happening. And if this is real, then I have to go home and I have to tell my family that the baby's gone. And I just sat there or laid there, I should say. And I can still remember the feeling of the tears, like, they roll down the sides of your face and into your ears when you're laying down, and how cold they were. And thinking, I have to go home and I have to tell my husband and my daughter and my mom that there's no baby anymore. And she let me stay there for a while, and she gave me a hug and she let me cry, and then asked if she could call someone to come get me. And I was just like, no, I have to go home. Like, I have to do this and I have to tell them what's happened. And we lived in an apartment building on the 4th floor. And before I had left to go to this appointment, there had been a gigantic dragonfly that was flying around everywhere in the parking garage near where my car was parked. And when I got home and I pulled into my space and I got out of my car, that dragonfly was dead in my parking space. And I can remember vividly seeing this dragonfly and thinking, but it was so alive. And now it's just laying there. And I went upstairs, and I can remember getting into the house and my husband looking at me and just saying, what's wrong? And I couldn't get the words out. And all I could say was, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You can't help but I felt like I was responsible, like something I had done or something I did had caused this. And I was sorry that I was taking this away from them. And of course, Jeremy, it obviously doesn't blame me, but we called my mom, and she came over from Plattsburgh to stay with Rachel, my daughter, Rachel and Jackson, my son, and she stayed there because I had to make a decision whether I wanted to have a D&C or whether I was going to go in and be induced into labor and deliver him. And I couldn't stomach the thought of going to sleep and waking up and having him be gone. I couldn't handle that. And so we chose to be induced, and I went in the next day, early in the morning. And again, I was put on the complete opposite side of the building from where everybody else was. So I wasn't near any of the other mothers who were laboring and had their babies. I was in a small little room at the other end of the unit, kept away from everyone else. So it was quiet and I couldn't hear anything. And we ended up being there for about 24-ish hours from the time it took to be induced to delivery. And we had 5 different nurses in that time. And most of them were very hands-off, very it was hard for them to be a part of what was going on. And I can remember trying to make myself go through with the delivery without any medication, because I felt like it was the last thing I could do for him was to feel everything. And my son I had without medication. So I thought, I can do this. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But I very quickly realized I didn't have the same coping skills. When you're going to get a healthy, beautiful baby at the end of it, you can get through it because you know what the end result is. And I couldn't do it. I actually ended up passing out in the middle of labor because the pain was so intense and I couldn't handle it, but I didn't want to ask for help. And when I came to, there was a brand new nurse there, and her name was Adeline. And when I woke up, I said to her, I'm so sorry that you had to walk into this. And she looked at me and she said, I chose to be here in this room with you. I asked for you because this is just as important as being there for the women who are giving birth to healthy babies. This is part of the process, and I wanted to be your nurse. And she was lovely. She was with us during the actual delivery of our son and held my hand while I pushed and delivered him because I didn't want to wake Jeremy up. Jeremy had finally fallen asleep in the chair after almost 24 hours, and she held my hand while I delivered TJ. We called him TJ. He had named him after my brother, Travis. So Travis had died in December, and TJ, our Travis, died in September, so 9 months apart. And she took him from me, and she made footprints, and she put a little hat on him and wrapped him up in a blanket and took amazing care of him and was so respectful towards me and Jeremy and TJ. And she gave us time with him, so we got to hold him and just talked to him for a couple of hours, and I remember praying over him and just thinking how small he was. Like, he was so small. He fit just like in my hands. That's how big he was. But he was there, his hands and his feet and his little face. Of course, when you're in that moment, you're thinking how perfect they are. And, I didn't see in the moment while I was holding him that anything was wrong, because to you, he's just your precious little baby. And afterwards, when we were finally ready for them to take him, she took him from us and took care of him in the hospital. Ended up cremating him for us and had him picked out a small little marble urn for him, and got him to us afterwards. I never, ever forgot the nurse who was with us, Adeline, and how wonderful she was with us. I had happened to be in a study for UVM at the time for that pregnancy, and when I called them and told them that I had lost the baby, they offered me counseling afterwards as part of this study to help going through everything. And I ended up being able to talk to her about both losing my brother and then losing our son. And then 8 weeks after we lost the baby, I found out I was pregnant again. That one time you give in. I was pregnant from that. And it ended up being a girl, and we named her Adeline after the nurse who was with us when we delivered Travis, because she made such an impact and was so wonderful to us. And a year after Addie was born, I was on Facebook, and this, the friends you may know popped up, and there was the nurse, Adeline. And I messaged her, and I got to tell her and send her pictures of Addie and say, she is our Adeline because you were with us when we had Travis, and we never would have had her had we had Travis. And I got to thank her for what she did for me. And I guess I'm grateful, because if that hadn't happened, Adeline would not be. Since that time, 3 months after we had TJ, I ended up accepting a position at the McClure-Miller Respite House in Colchester, and I have been a hospice nurse ever since. And I get to talk about Travis every day I work. I get to tell his story, and I am able to empathize with my patients and their families in a way that never would have happened had I not experienced all those things. Like I said, that season of grief and loss completely changed the direction of my life. I would not be who I am or where I am right now if I had not gone through those things. And I get to use them every day and help others.
Wow, Betsey. Thank you for sharing. I'll let you.
Yeah, absolutely. Betsey, I think what strikes me the most is at first was the length of your grief, right? Like feels from realizing your brother was passing to working through that to, it's almost like did you feel like, when did you get time, I guess, to grieve your brother, right? Because like you said, you were the caretaker. A long time to almost be in fight or flight, right?
Yeah, it was a very long time. And that's one thing I talk to my patients about. I mean, their families now, is that the role of the caregiver totally delays the process of grief. And because I work in an inpatient facility, when people are able to get into an inpatient facility, it allows their loved ones to be the wife, to be the sister, to be the dad, instead of being the caregiver. And for me, at least, going into that caregiver role, I totally forgot about the fact that this was my brother. And then having to go right into nursing school. And anyone who's been in nursing school knows that it is 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, and you don't get any relief until you graduate. Like, nothing outside can exist because you can't be distracted. And so I totally had to shut down everything and not deal with it at all. And then as soon as I got to the end of nursing school, like literally that week, I found out I was pregnant. And so I had to shift gears again to, okay, we have to get prepared. There's this baby coming. And I honestly didn't process anything from my brother until I had to sit down and process the loss of my son. Like I didn't process losing Travis until I lost TJ. And I kind of feel like that's one of the gifts that TJ gave us in his presence, him being with us for 20 weeks, was that in losing him, I finally had to sit down and accept that I had also lost Travis and had to work through that. Because I found my sessions with the counselor always ended up going back to Travis, my brother, because I had 36 years with my brother. He was my best friend. He was the person who protected me on the bus when I was being bullied. He was the one who gave amazing teddy bear hugs and always whispered in my ear how proud of me he was and how he just wanted me to be happy and was always my cheerleader no matter what was going on. Like that loss, I'm not saying losing the baby wasn't hard, but that loss, because he was such a big part of my life for so long, was harder to process than the loss of a baby I didn't have any memories with yet. And I'm not saying that one is worse than the other. It's not. But because I delayed the processing of such a significant loss, TJ allowed me to then stop what I was doing and feel what I had tried to bury. So it did. It took a long time, through even past having Adeline and.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you feel becoming a hospice nurse after just dealing with it and seeing your brother go through it? How did you do that?
Hard.
Yeah.
Every patient was my brother for the first, I'd say 2 years. Every young man with colon cancer was Travis. Yeah, I saw him everywhere. And I don't know if people realize it, but colon cancer is becoming a young person's disease. And so my colon cancer patients were in their 30s, were in their 40s. They were young. They had little kids. It was hard to have boundaries in the beginning. I didn't have boundaries in the beginning. I was very emotionally involved in all of these cases. It was like losing Travis all over again. Every time I lost one of these people, it was really hard. But I feel like the experience we had at home with Travis could have been better. And so I was determined to make the hospice experience for my patients and their family members as comfortable as possible, because that's what I would have wanted for Travis. So even though it was really hard to be there, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I cried in the bedroom. I just had to go in there and I had to cry, and I had to take a few moments, and then I could go back out and keep going. And I have to say, I work with some amazing people who understand the value of the work that we do. And the team over at the respite house is phenomenal. And they took care of me in those moments when I needed to break down and I needed to acknowledge my grief along with my patients and their families' grief. They stepped up and they took over for me so that I could have a few minutes. But yeah, there were a lot of times I was in that bedroom crying because it was so hard to separate myself from other people's grief. I mean, I consider myself kind of like an empath and am affected by other people's energy. And so it was hard, having lived what these brothers and sisters were going through and what the patients were having lived that. It was really hard in the beginning to figure out my boundaries and to not make it personal. So it was hard.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Can I ask, you'd mentioned, with your brother feeling angry, right? In those, and I felt it. I mean, I don't know if it's the same as yours, but it's like any experience. If you put the time and energy into the thing, right, and into being there fully, and then it's your brother, and those in 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes time, come on, man, you couldn't have held on 3 more minutes for me. But then you worked through it, and I believe processed that it was him protecting you again, right? How quickly did you get there? How, because anger can really be held in the grief process for some time. How quickly did you come around to realize, that was for the anger to kind of disappear?
It actually took a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't become a hospice nurse. I held on to a lot of guilt with Travis's diagnosis because earlier in that year, so that was end of February, he was diagnosed. And I can remember my son's first birthday, which is February 9th. Just before then, he had asked me what an ulcer felt like. And I had tried to describe it. This was through text message, and asked him if he was seeing blood or if he was having a burning pain. And he kind of blew it off and didn't want to. It was when your sister asks me, are you bleed? Is there blood in your stool? It's not a comfortable conversation. And he blew it off. And I remember not thinking about it ever again, not thinking about it. And then seeing him at my son's birthday party, and he didn't look good. He looked pale and he looked like he had lost weight, and he was quiet and he wasn't feeling good, and they left early. And he had an upper GI or something endoscopy scheduled that didn't reveal anything. And they were at the hospital, and he messaged me and he was like, I'm in a lot of pain and I don't know what to do. They said there's nothing there. And so I said, go to the emergency room. They're not going to let you leave until they can figure out why you're in pain. If you're in that much pain and you can't stand, go to the emergency room. And that's when they did all the imaging and found it. So I had held a lot of guilt about not following up and not insisting that he go to the doctor, because he was a guy. They don't go unless they're dying or bleeding, and he was literally dying and didn't know it. And so I feel like all that guilt from the very beginning when he was first diagnosed came back up at the end, that I didn't do something sooner. And so I think that guilt fueled the anger I had at the end at him for not waiting until I got there, and not at least not giving me that to be there. And then I became a hospice.
I was going to say, I think there's something too. It almost feels better to be angry. It's like we keep them alive within that anger. Right?
I agree 100%. Yeah. So that resurfaced. And then a year later, I was working as a hospice nurse, and I saw people wait for someone to get there, and I saw people wait for someone to leave before they let go. And it was purposeful. People would sit there and sit there and sit there, and people would wait and not go and not go. And then I'd tell them to go out, go get some fresh air, have lunch, and then come back and you can be fresh again. And while they were gone, their loved one would die. And I also watched people wait and wait and hang on and hang on and hang on for that last person that they needed to say goodbye to get there, and then they would go. And having watched that in person happen several times, I had this light bulb moment where I was like, okay, I know who you were as a person. You were the man who protected me. You made sure that I was okay first. And then you made sure I don't have to relive that image in my mind of what it was like to watch you take your last breaths. I don't have that. And my mom does, and it haunts her. What I remember is Travis saying, go Eagles. That was his last words, were go Eagles. And I have that image in my head instead of what was at the end. And so once I finally realized that and was able to take a step back and have that perspective of, no, that was just you protecting me, the anger went away. I was able to let go of that. But it took, I'd say, 3 years before.
It took more lived experiences, right? I hadn't ever thought of that in terms of hospice and just someone's ability to choose, even in their last moment, right? Who's waiting either for someone to come versus someone to go. And that makes a lot of sense to me.
What about, I'm not sure what your faith was before, or has your faith changed at all? Has that become stronger? Did it change? that's like so much loss. I'm just like, so Betsey, I just feel for you that your story, it's really inspiring.
Okay.
But yeah, no, your faith. Yeah.
I've always been a Christian. There are times where I've been more involved and times where I've been less involved, but I had started going back to church after Rachel was born and found kind of like a community there and was a part of worship team. So I was leading the music portion of our services and found that the music had always helped me, like worship music had always helped me just get out anything that was bothering me and helping me or anything that I was trying to work through. I honestly don't know how I would have survived those losses if I hadn't had that as a foundation, my connection to like the worship music. I mean, that specific song, Great Are You, Lord, that was playing when Travis died. I hear it in the most like obvious moments of when Travis is around and I know it's him. And that song helped me with Travis, but then with losing the baby, there was a song called Oceans. I don't know if you're familiar with it, and it basically says like, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. And I really had to lean into that. Like I had to focus on, there's a verse that essentially says, you may not know what I'm doing now, but someday you will. And now being in the after part of this, I can look back and be like, I understand that I had to go through those things to get to the point that I'm at now. I mean, we're talking, it'll be 10 years since Travis died this year. And I didn't see it when I was going through it. I didn't understand when I was going through it. But I can look back now and say, okay, I was given these trials so that I could go on to serve others and help them through their trials and to have the empathy and the compassion for those that are experiencing loss better than those who haven't been there and haven't lived it. And I know if I didn't have that foundation, spiritual foundation, believing in God and believing that I was going to have the opportunity to see my brother and my son again one day when it's my time, I don't think I would have survived it. I mean, after losing the baby, I barely got out of bed for a couple of months. I mean, I got out of bed to go to counseling and come back home. And I listened to that song on repeat literally for days. Like it was days of not getting out of my bed with that song on, saying, Spirit, lead me. Let me trust you. You've got me through this. I'm not alone. And someday I'm going to know why. I think it reaffirmed that belief for me. The foundation was there, but having lived it, my faith is definitely a lot stronger than it used to be. And I can firmly say I believe 100% after the things I've seen and the things I've gone through and like what we've lived through. I'm going to see them again. I'm going to see them again in heaven, and they're there. And I know they're watching over me. They send me signs. Like I know, and I believe I was never alone through that process. God was walking with me through that. And even though it was really hard, my trials had a purpose, and I'm living that purpose now.
You spoke of signs. Would you say you have an equal number of signs for both your child and your brother? Like, do you have signs for both, or what does that look like in your life?
I do. Yeah, I do have signs. I think TJ sends them more than Travis does. The week after we delivered TJ, there were dragonflies brought to me every single day. Like random weird dragonflies. We went to a restaurant over in New York, and my daughter did the coin machine, and out came a plastic dragonfly. And like finding the dragonflies, they made us, when we delivered TJ, they put together a little box for him with his footprints and the blanket and the hat and his medical bracelet and everything. And on the inside of it, there was a dragonfly pin, like just all these different things that come up. So we see dragonflies all the time. And it's to the point where like my kids will see a dragonfly and be like, oh, there's brother. Like they think that he's joining them. He's coming to see them and what they're doing. And they just show up like in random places, whether it's a piece of jewelry or like the dragonfly that's hanging from your fan above you right now.
Mhm.
Like we find them everywhere. And I absolutely believe that he sends them to all of us. With Travis, I think it's a little more subtle, and he sends blue jays, and he uses that song, Great Are You Lord, when at like random times of the day. And there's only been a couple of times that I've felt like I've like had a visit from him. Since he's died, I've had one dream of him the entire time since he's died. And in it, he was walking down our childhood backyard, coming down out of the woods, and he was his healthy self. He wasn't how sickly he looked at the end of it. And all he did was he came down and he hugged me and he said, I'm okay and you're okay. And that was it. And it was enough. But TJ, we get dragonflies all the time. Definitely.
And for our listeners, can you think back to the grieving process and kind of what was helpful to you? What did someone do that was helpful to you in your process? Or what advice could you give to someone who is standing beside someone going through such extreme grief?
I think obviously going to a grief counselor was very helpful. Not even necessarily that she gave me advice, but she asked me the questions to help me figure out how I was feeling about things. And she was just a sounding board, like someone I could get what I was feeling out with without having to burden like my family who was grieving the same losses. Like having that person who was just there for me to talk to, and I didn't have to worry about sugarcoating anything. I didn't have to worry about what they were processing at the same time. That was really helpful. And then for me, after losing the baby, I was in a place where I couldn't do anything. Like I had a hard enough time, like just surviving through the day without thinking about, I need to clean my house and I need to cook meals and I need to do these things. And so I did have some people who stepped up and helped with that, which I will forever be grateful for. And then the biggest thing that has helped me with any of the losses I've dealt with has been having something that makes me think of them, something I can like keep with me. Like for me, I have a dragonfly. Can you see a dragonfly tattoo that is for TJ, and I got that like 3 weeks after, and I get to look at it every single day and see him. And then I've got sunflowers for my brother, but I also have a necklace that has my brother's ashes in it. And I have a display case that has like TJ's urn and all of the dragonflies I collected. And we still celebrate them every year. So we still celebrate Travis's birthday on April 4th and TJ's birthday on September 3rd. Every year we celebrate. And I give my family Christmas presents from them every year that are from Travis and TJ. And I just make sure that I keep them alive, and we don't forget. We still celebrate them, and I keep those little things, the little dragonfly knickknacks and my pictures of my brother and his baseball glove and his He-Man toys. Like I have all those things out and on display like in my house so I can look at them every day. And I talk about them as much as I can.
What a wonderful way to honor them.
Is there anything you want to share specifically about who your brother was, just for the listener, or anything about the child that you lost,
Sure.
physically? And then,
yeah, Travis was the best big brother. We grew up getting into trouble together, going down to our pond, and he taught me how to catch bullfrogs and build forts in the woods and how to play Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega Genesis and win it with the cheat codes. And he protected me on the school bus when I was being bullied. And he was known in high school as the king of the underdogs because he took everybody under his wing and protected them. And he had the best sense of humor and loved making people laugh and would even laugh at his own dorky jokes. He made me pumpkin pie milkshakes for my birthday and gave the best bear hugs and was everybody's cheerleader. He just wanted everybody to be happy. I mean, he struggled in his life. He was the kind of guy that like silently struggled and put everybody first and just kept trying and kept trying. He never stopped trying. Even at the end, he never gave up. He kept going. And I think what really defines him the most is I can remember on the day he was diagnosed, he looked at me and he was like, Betsey, I don't care about me. What I am most worried about is all of you and how you're all going to handle this, because I'm going to be okay and I'm going to get through this, but I don't want any of you to be sad. And he was just that person who cared about everybody else and wanted them to be happy and take care of them. And we chose to name our son after him. So my brother was Travis John and he was going to be Travis James. And we obviously called him TJ, but I just knew that TJ was Travis. He was going to be Travis coming back. And I wanted to honor him by giving TJ his name, but I kind of feel like TJ would have been the same. I felt like even though he didn't stay long, him coming here was the chance for me to process the grief of losing my brother. And he helped take care of me by doing that and giving me the opportunity to remember and appreciate my big brother. I miss what I don't know about him, like who he would have been, you know, when the anniversaries come. And you think, well, you'd be in 3rd grade this year. Like, would you have played soccer? Would you play hockey like your brother? Would you have been into nature and dinosaurs? And who were you going to be? And I missed that. But I am grateful that we got the time that we did, because he helped heal a lot of me from losing Trav. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsey, so much for spending this time with us, this hour with us, to speak to us of your brother and of your son, for the work you do in the world. I think it's very special how empathic you speak of your brother being and how empathic you continue to be here on earth for us. So thank you. I'm also going to let Mandy, I know this is emotional for you too, hun, but just what we will do, Betsey, I said we'll put something up, right? And we'll also put in, you know, any books or recommendations or things for people that we may have to also provide support. But thank you so much for spending this time for us. It was very meaningful.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Consider being a supporter of the show by downloading episodes, subscribing to the podcast, or clicking the support link in the show notes. You can also leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. If you would like to share your story, please message the Facebook or Instagram page. You can also email griefandgratitudepodcast@gmail.com. Tune in next Monday for an all-new episode. This podcast was created to honor the memory of Declan Shaw ONeil and Jennifer Lynn Berry.